2, 1. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us today. After welcoming almost 9,000 participants that have joined us from all over the world, we are truly happy to welcome you back on board for our third season and second episode of our AI Spotlight series, focusing on how artificial intelligence is impacting and augmenting financial services, from the banking and wealth management industry to the insurance sector. Welcoming you today on the rise of AI in asset and wealth management. A little bit of fantastic speakers' background. Joining us from Milan, Italy, Tommaso Migliore, CEO and founder of M.M, a firm developing AI-backed investment strategies for financial markets, providing advisory and sub-advisory services to institutional investors. For those who don't know, Tommaso used to play for the national ice hockey team in Italy as captain, prior to dedicating himself to score with his new team at M.M. He's joined by Miss Yvonne Pichert, Senior Vice President of Business Development, with almost 15 years of experience in the field. She'll be giving a workshop on the win-win opportunities of AI-driven investing. Dr. Markus Schuller is founder and managing partner of Panthera Solutions, a leading applied behavioral finance firm based in Monaco. As award-winning investment decision architects, Panthera enables investment professionals to effectively integrate human and artificial intelligence in an ethical and sustainable way. Markus is also an adjunct professor at leading European business schools and has published in academic and professional journals. He will be giving a workshop on AI-backed decision-making in investment committees. Mr. Davide Martucci is CEO and founder of NextGate Tech, a Luxembourg-based fintech revolutionizing the fund industry technology thanks to his intelligent automation solution. NextGate Tech provides a SaaS solution for funds industry players. The solution relies on next generation technology to offer data management as a service and smart automation of back office processes. They recently announced the successful closing of their latest round of financing of 2 million euros. And they are loved partners, by the way, hosted at our very facility. Ms. Mousavi has an impressive track record to say the least. Just to mention a few names, she has had university faculty positions in finance and statistics at Johns Hopkins, Georgia State, and Penn State. She has been a fellow of the Max Planck Institute for Human Development in Berlin since 2007 and a mentor of the University of Chicago Wisdom Project since 2008. I think that Ms. Mousavi deserves a session of her own, to say the very least. Thank you for being with us. She's also an advisor to Panthera Solutions. On the moderator side, we have Mr. Dimitrios Kampas, leader at the KPMG Lighthouse Center of Excellence for Data Analytics. Dimitrios used to work as a postdoctoral researcher at the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology, focusing exclusively on fintech, and holds a PhD from the University of Luxembourg in machine learning and artificial intelligence. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the screen is yours. Dimitrios, please.
Thank you, Anthony. Good afternoon and good morning to everyone, to all our participants, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. Welcome to the AI Spotlight series organized by the Loft House of Finance and Technology. Loft and I have the pleasure to host a panel of exceptional practitioners, thought leaders, and academics, as Anthony said before. Our panel discussion we will go around basically the application of AI in the wealth and asset management, and to stick to the title, the rise of artificial intelligence in wealth management and asset management. Our experts will exchange on the wealth and asset management industry's disruption through AI, the new business model that come along with the massive cognitive technologies, and the challenges when dealing with AI. But I cannot wait to jump to the discussion and start by introducing our experts. Right. Again, today with us is M.M, represented by Yvonne and Tommaso, Panthera Solutions by Shabnam and Markus, and last but not least, Davide from NextGate Tech. So I will give them, the token for a short introduction, starting from Yvonne, going to Markus, and then to Davide. Please, Yvonne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dimitrios. So at M.M, we develop AI-driven investment strategies for financial markets. Our clients are institutional investors, such as banks, family offices, pension plans, and wealth managers. And we work very closely with them to support the investment decision-making process. We are a young company. We were founded in 2015, but despite that, we have quite a long track record already in our investment strategies, some of them more than 3 years. We manage about €500 million in assets in dedicated investment portfolios for our clients, both equity and multi-asset. and advise clients on a further 4 billion euros in discretionary portfolio asset allocation. We've been awarded multiple awards for our research and approach to AI in investment. Most notably, in 2017, we were the only European fintech company to be selected by Google for their Silicon Valley acceleration program for startups.
Excellent. Davide?
Yes, good morning, everyone. So my name is Davide Martucci. I'm the CEO and co-founder of NextGate Tech. And so what we do at NextGate Tech is that we provide data management as a service and data analytics for the fund industry with a focus on the middle and back office processes automation using machine learning and other advanced statistic methodologies that we will discuss a bit later, I guess. So pleased to be here.
And Markus?
Thank you and good morning. We are a behavioral design company based here in the Principality of Monaco, working with professional investors only, asset managers and asset owners, on improving the quality routines of their investment decision process, which has a human intelligence part and an artificial intelligence part. None of those two parts can exist as silos, so you somehow have to integrate that, and our solutions to SaaS are giving the structure for our intervention framework to help professional investors to do exactly that.
Excellent. So as you realized, we have all the value chain, right, from the back office to the front office today, and this is exciting. So I want to start with the front office, right, and a question for Tommaso and Markus. AI and investment strategies, right? Thinking of investments, my mind goes to well-known investors like Warren Buffett, where we know reading them that they relied on their instincts to invest and achieve alpha. But is this the only ingredient for successful investment? Which is the critical elements for developing reliable investment strategies, and why selecting AI-powered strategy today?
Should I start?
Yes, Tommaso, please.
So, indeed, the world has changed a lot since the 70s and the 80s. And we've experienced a so-called democratization of information. Basically, internet has leveled out the field game, and everybody has access to the same level of information, basically at the same time. Moreover, roughly 90% of the data that we observe today were produced in the last 2 years. So if you think about it, 2 years ago, we only had 10% of the data. So even though Warren Buffett might still rely on long-term vision, I do not believe he's relying on just on gut feeling. He's definitely relying on interpreting well information. And we all know that with interpreting a lot of information, AI does allows to have a big advantage on that. So in the complex world of today, AI represents the best tool to interpret this new complexity brought by a more globalized world, where information flow is really, really hard to track, and where data is produced every day more than the day prior. So altogether, in this context, AI is the tool to navigate this complexity, and we have to remember that AI allows to be adaptable. So it's not a fixed code that once have been coded, it's going to be the same forever, but it has within itself a chance to adapt as market conditions do evolve. And so putting all of this together, it kind of draws the perfect picture on why it is relevant to speak about AI today and why it's relevant to invest in AI today.
Mm-hmm. So basically AI is the enabler today, right, for processing more data and make more informed decisions, right? Markus, do you agree with that?
To some extent, it also became a buzzword. There's a lot of hot air in artificial intelligence as it is. I think we need to understand, as you refer to Warren Buffett, he's not instinct-driven, but he has intuition-driven heuristics, to be precise, when it comes from the behavioral aspect of the contribution to their decision quality shaped over decades of successful investing. And this is also what our research has shown, namely that investment strategies that are reliable, meaning can be robustly repeated over a longer period of time to build the track record you need to be considered successful in our industry have two dominant factors contributing to it. One is to be the best I can be, so skill development. I need to be at the knowledge frontier of the domain I've specialized in, and then translating that into most evidence-based investment decisions. Most evidence-based is nothing else than another expression for most rational. And this is the maximum we can achieve, right? It's falsified that markets are efficient and market participants are rational. We know they're adaptive and we're bounded in our rationality. So what we can maximize is to take most evidence-based investment decisions. And for that, AI can be a tool to create data or source data and then process data to support the human intelligence to then take most evidence-based investment decisions. So yes, it can contribute, but it's still not there, if it ever will be, to fully rely on.
Mm-hmm. Good. Davide, we heard about the value proposition of AI in drawing investment strategies, right? Your core business and value proposition point to the back office operations. What AI has to offer there, and what are the few typical use cases in Luxembourg market?
I think it's exactly the same as Markus and Tommaso said. So AI, machine learning methodologies can offer a lot for the back office, but we are far from having a big, AI model that would replace a conducting officer in a Manco or a fund accountant in a fund administrator. We are more in a situation where we use different pieces of machine learning methodologies to enhance the entire process. And I think it's the same in all the part of the value chain from the front to the back. Is being able to enhance or replace manual and repetitive tasks that are very are highly present in the back office and middle office processes with more efficient process based on machine learning. So using machine learning where we know machine learning is good, and continue to use the human where we know the human is still better, right? And in terms of use case, I mean, in the back office, there are a lot of use case. I think that one that is the most common is NLP and extraction of different information from text, being able to actually have parameters and variables extracted from prospectuses. So this is something that is very helpful for back office work. And then plenty of other uses that are more in line with what we do at NextGate Tech. If I take the example of the management company world and NAV oversight, so performing oversight on the NAV calculation, AI, machine learning can be very helpful in different steps. And the same as Markus said, starting from the data management, so really the collection of the data, the mapping of the data, where you can train model that are very precious to map data together that are normally non-harmonized. So being able to do that. Then following the process to perform other kind of methodologies, such as using clustering methodology to create better peers to compare your NAV with, and being able to rely on something that is more precise, or using time series forecasting methodology to forecast NAV. So it's really using machine learning, in the entire process and as a toolkit to enhance the entire back office and automated the back office processes.
Listening carefully what you said, Davide, human still has a role, right, in the process, right? AI, it's clear that cannot really replace the human sophistication and so on. So I want to ask Markus, what it is the role that humans have today in the investment process, and how a human fits into that, and how this role has shifted over the last years.
The interesting thing is that the rule hasn't changed. The primacy of human decision making is still intact. What has changed is how much data can be processed before the decision point has been reached. I started as an equity trader. We were proud of ourselves having built a biotech database for fundamental analysis 20 years ago, before the boom started at this niche. And we analyzed a handful of stocks, a day to have an understanding of the niche. Now, today, with a click, you can, thanks to artificial intelligence, rather augmented intelligence, it can perform the same for thousands of stocks within seconds. Fair enough. But the bottleneck is not the data. The bottleneck is not the computer power. The bottleneck is the human being. If you look at how investment committees work today, and we have a workshop following this panel, it hasn't changed that much the last 20 years. So the bottleneck is how to present the insights gained from the machine processing more data and better data in order to improve the decision quality overall at the decision point by the human decision maker. That's the optimization goal here.
Mm-hmm. So not a lot of things changed, right, in this over the years for humans. Tommaso and Yvonne, do you agree with this point?
I mean, yes and no. To a certain extent, it's investing has always it's always a complex environment. On one side, you will always have investment committees that work with completely different logic. But when it comes down to really build an effective strategy to manage a portfolio, AI is at a level where it can actually deliver consistent results. And Yvonne will go through in the following session after the webinar on a dedicated panel just to cover especially where is the value and the opportunity of using AI. But it's really interesting, where is the role in the human of all of this. On my side, I can say that on the development side, it's key that the team behind the technology has really a very scientific approach. One thing that Markus and Davide both said that totally agree with is AI is a tool. It's not this crazy system that can do everything by itself. So you need to have behind people which know how to point the tool in the right direction. So on the development side, the role is very, very important. And of course, there is also the business side, which I'll leave Yvonne to answer, which takes on different dynamics altogether.
Just a question here. You said pointing the tool to the right direction, right? You're talking about the narrow AI, just break the problem into narrow pieces and solve it. That's the idea.
Absolutely. We have to think that, investing is something that does not happen in numbers. It happens on the real economy because things are happening out there. We buy and sell stuff. Okay. That's how investment ultimately is. And the financial market is a reflection of that. So thinking that AI can just, what often people say, find non-linear relation between stuff, it's kind of a fairy tale. It has to work on something that is relevant, financial dynamics that we can understand, that we can absolutely control, but then it can catch it more dynamically, adaptive as time passes by, and without being too much affected by emotion, as we tend to be as human.
If you look at the publications in the field of relevant journals, Journal of Portfolio Management, Portfolio Investments, then artificial intelligence is currently published in the realm of how can I find my way into structured and unstructured data. Also, how can I somehow model regime tricks, right? So the best for AI at the current state is if we would still live in a Markowitz world. where we have single period, single factor models that can be optimized. But that's not how markets work.
I don't fully agree with that, to be honest, in the sense that there are two routes into developing a model. Definitely, what you said, Marcus, is right, and that's one major way. But for example, us as a company, we focused all our efforts in the R&D department into really finding the best way to develop a model that optimized toward robustness. And what I think you can appreciate after that is the ultimate result out of that is not really a system that tries to find the best variable configuration. Not really. It's a system that works towards understanding the real dynamic behind making an investment decision. One of the biggest problems when it comes to investing is just measuring the status quo. Okay, if I were to ask anyone in finance, how do you define earning per shares? They would use some time reference. So how do you measure anything, volatility? They would look at, I don't know, 1 year, 3 months, and already making that decision makes a huge difference. Think about measuring volatility with a 1 year rolling period today and 1 month ago. 1 month ago, we still had the big V shape in the returns. So just being able not to be affected by how you look at the present, that makes a huge difference. And of course, a traditional econometric model cannot have that flexibility to work in that direction. So towards this development of the technology, which is what we focused on, we're not bounded by working on optimizing just one parameter with very, very basic machine learning algorithm, but we can work into optimizing multiple parameters towards stability. And that ultimately allows for better control and more robust results.
So AI today is complementing the econometrics, right? The typical finance models. Is it true?
Absolutely.
So Shabnam, I mean, thinking about humans, I cannot avoid pointing to you, right? We know that humans have like inherent characteristics, like it's our human nature. We were driven by beliefs, biases, emotions. And these are the drivers for investors too, right? Investors are not rational. What is the role of behavioral finance in investment strategies, and how AI deals with the behavioral biases?
Okay, so going back into the history, because I'm used to teaching, in 1950s, there was economics, and mathematicians and statisticians joined them, and then the idea became, okay, econ, stat, joined together. We're doing a statistical analysis. We talk about decision making. This is focused on the end result. Then in about 80s, too many anomalies have been compiled and the model was not working and the theory had so many problems, we needed to deviate from its assumptions, that we said, okay, let's look at the other disciplines, and psychology joined. The marriage between psychology and economics became behavioral finance. Now, emotions are also a parameter. They can be analyzed statistically. With econometrics, you just call them something, E. This is the new parameter. And then what was the focus from this? You are thinking about something that is treatable and can be improved. That's the goal. You're thinking about the errors. Let's give them a character. Errors are two types. They're either predictable or non-predictable. And the other speakers who talked today, mentioned predictability a lot. If something is not predictable, it's a noise. Let's just live with it. If it is predictable, however, we can do everything with it, We call that a bias. The statisticians call them a bias. And then behavioral finance became about de-biasing, that is correcting biases, that is finding strategies, designing strategies that would reduce that predictable error. Time went on. The other group who were working together were psychologists and computer scientists. They were not really interested in the end result, they were usually focused on the process, on the path, on the way a problem is solved, on algorithmic thinking, on dealing with complex situations, that Tommaso was saying. And in these complex situations, what comes into place is using heuristics, is using things that are less than fully rational, but then you deal with them, you model them somehow, you model them good enough so that they work for you. At this time, intelligence became really important because humans were writing the algorithms for the machines. And these were expert systems. Expert systems took in a lot of data and then gave us what strategy we wanted to use. They were fed by what we were thinking about. But artificial intelligence, ideally, is something that has the element of organic intelligence. Organic intelligence goes like this. Do you call a person really intelligent if you have to tell them everything they have to do, clearly all the steps in order to get the task done? No. Is the machine there? Maybe. How? The symbiosis. So that's what we are moving forward to now in 2000s, after the marriage between psychology with econ and stat, that the computer plus psychology has come into the picture, we're looking at intelligence and we're thinking, okay, what's the new problem? I'm taking the keywords that you used, Tommaso: complexity, robustness, and adaptivity. And these are the key words. How do I achieve them? Not necessarily by attacking them with more sophistication, but with some sort of simplicity that algorithms allow. How do algorithms allow that? In machine learning, for instance, as Davide was saying, we let them train, we let them learn. We let them predict based on learning, we let them find the patterns. Now, learning in humans is based on experience, as Markus was saying. Learning in machines, we train them to learn something from the data. Tommaso said there is a lot of data. The glitch there, the point that we want to reach is here. We want the machines to be able not to need every step of the way instructed by us, the operators. But here's where the last point comes. And that's what Markus mentioned, augmentation. No longer we are looking at man on one side and machine on the other side. We are looking at this man with prostheses that are machine enabled, that are artificially intelligent, drawing on the organic intelligence. And that is what we don't have a theory for. Yeah, so that's what I'm working on now.
Interesting point, Shabnam. Thank you. Right. Now I want to jump a bit to my favorite question, right? Because we work in KPMG and we have this question with my colleagues, and I want to allude these questions to Davide, cloud and Luxembourg market, right? You are active in the market, you know very well the Luxembourg market. I would like you to share with us your experience when it comes to cloud. Which is the level of cloud adoption in the Luxembourg market, and which are the barriers today? And if you can touch upon the standpoint of the regulators.
Yes, maybe I just do the link because it's like we come from why we are discussing about cloud now suddenly. And this is something that we push a lot because it's for us the trigger of our even existence, that it's possible today to offer solution that use AI, and it's true I use the term machine learning because I prefer to stay humble on that, but that's another discussion. And for that, the regulation in terms of public cloud is key, and is key because the possibility to scale up to actual infinity and having access to this computing power but as well the possibility to having access to the solutions that are offered by public cloud provider, such as Google, Amazon, and you name them, the big one. This opened the door to use those tools, so machine learning tools, in the time that is needed for us in the middle and back office field. That needs to be short, right? Because they need to release nav, you need to process risk management, you need to perform reconciliation before to have the view on your portfolio. So the public cloud regulation is really the triggered in terms of really implementing machine learning in the field. So in terms of what is the state of the art, I think in Luxembourg, the CSSF have been a pioneer in terms of regulating cloud since 2017, and the cloud computing circular that have been released and then amended in 2019. This is the state in terms of regulation. The same in Europe with the European Bank Authority and other regulators across Europe that started to adopt public cloud. Now, this of course is not something that because it's regulated, everyone started to adopt cloud, right? Particularly, I mean, people that are very and companies that are very sensitive in terms of security of their data, and we completely understand that. So there is on one side the regulation evolution that is going for sure on the right direction, and CSSF started to lead that at the European level since years, and the other the industry that is slowly adopting that. I think that the actual situation with the COVID helped to start to adopt cloud solution, but it's a first step, right? It's not because those company and Manco and fund administrators start to work with Microsoft 365 and Gmail that it means that they adopt public cloud. So it's I think a slow pace and an evolution that is key for the adoption of machine learning on and software as a service solution on a daily basis. You know, really being able to bring those artificial intelligence methodology into the business. So you need this bridge.
Okay, getting closer to the end, right? It's a question that I want to for you to answer, and I give it to all of you to let me know the limitations and challenges of AI, because it doesn't come for free, right? We hear about AI, we understand the advancements of AI and how it can help different business lines to add value, but which are the challenges and limitations? And please, it is a question to all of you. Feel free to jump in.
Now, you know, one of the things we mention a lot is we work in a world where is full of complexity, and the complexity is increasing. That's a problem. We don't fully have the grasp on how a machine can actually learn everything. One of the things that Shaban mentioned, and we totally agree. So basically, the limitation are around the fact that you still have to monitor the system very, very closely, and we're all aware of that. But there is some, very, very interesting insight that are coming, nicely out of the surface, which is basically that there are some techniques on how a decision is made, and this is what we're currently working on. So the interesting thing behind the technology, behind what actually AI is and what machine learning is, that sometimes are just big words thrown out there with no meaning. But there is a methodology on how a sane decision is made, and usually a sane decision is made by evaluating in the best way possible the status quo at the very stage. This is why, if we look at weather forecasting, it's so tough to forecast the weather after 8 days. Not because we don't have the models to do that, but because it's really, really hard to understand what's the state of the art is today, in this very moment. And in a complex model, just a small, stone on the water creates a ripple effect that actually alters all predictions. So, the difficulties, and this is where we're focusing at the moment, is how can we give the system more data in the right way so that it can use it to make its own prediction, it takes into account how the measurement is done. I know it gets fairly complex, but this is what Yvonne will cover in a section if you're interested. But this is a game changer, because the game changer is not really, you know, what data give to, you know, what is the right data to give to the machine. That's, you know, that's not really relevant. But how can we develop a system that no matter what the data is, it can really interpret whether it's relevant or not?
Being cautious of the time and getting to the end, right? I want to ask Markus and Davide and Tommaso to give me 10 seconds, a key takeaway from this session today for our audience. Markus?
If you want to benefit from artificial intelligence, work on your human intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Davide?
For me, the key message is to be aware that machine learning is there, and we are hearing that for the front office or back office, but to be aware as well on the limitation, indeed, as you said before, and look more in detail on where we can, you know, really enhance the different part of the process thanks to those methodologies. So this is the key message.
And Tommaso?
I'll leave it up to Yvonne to close it up.
Please.
So I'd say that I think AI is a topic that can cause quite opposite reactions, you know, from curiosity and fascination on one side to opposite, you know, skepticism and fear on the other side. I think a bit of healthy skepticism is always good, but I don't think we should consider AI as a threat when it comes to investing. I actually think it's a big opportunity, and that is really about diversity. You know, basically the basic principle of investing is diversification. And so, you know, think about, you don't want to put all your eggs into one basket from, you know, an asset class perspective. But also, I think AI is a different approach to investing. And so using that different approach and diversifying across different approaches definitely has an opportunity for the end investor.
Excellent. I would like to thank you for the amazing discussion. Right, we are a bit longer than expected. I would like to extend my gratitude to Loft for giving us the opportunity to be here today. And of course, a big thank you to our audience. Now I will pass the talking to Anthony to close the panel session and introduce you to the two interesting workshops coming up.
Yes, thank you very much, Dimitros. Now we want to see whether you've paid attention, of course. So we already have a couple of people taking part. All you need to do is to drop your last and first name in it, and we'll start in about 30 seconds. Please go ahead. We want to go up to 20 at the very least. At the very least, come on, guys. It's a fun quiz. All of the questions have been compiled by our speakers. Let's go. Don't be shy. Let's go. Hi, Gary. Hi, Huge. Simon is in there as well. We have Michael. We got Rob, Mauro Guerini, Ernesto. Hello, Bernard Nicola. How are you, sir? Ashbari, let's go. Steven Spielberg. Simon Petitjean. Let's go. I want to see a couple more. I want to see a couple more. Okay, you got 10 more seconds left. Okay. We got the boss in there as well. That's your Subari. Oh my God. Mr. Ryan Ellington. 5 more seconds left. Damien. Come on, guys. 4 more. 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. You got 3 minutes. Huge leading, Kristen. Huge is still leading, followed by Mr. Mirsch, followed by the boss. Okay. Alex is leading together with Defin. Mr. Mersch, Rob Philippa, Ryan Ellington is leading. Mr. Ellington is still leading, followed by Hugh Stefan, Mauro Guerini. You got 90 seconds left, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Ellington is still leading. Mauro Guerini second place, Rob Philippa third place. You got 1 minute left. Hurry up, guys. Hurry up, guys. Mr. Guerini first place, followed by Mr. Ellington, Damien, Michael Zamiotis, Rob Philippa. 15 seconds. 15 seconds left. Come on, guys. Ten seconds. Mr. Bernard Nicolas Damien. Mr. Guerini first place. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And here we go. We have a winner. Please, Mr. Guerini, introduce yourself. Mr. Guerini, Mauro Guerini, please introduce yourself. You can unscreen and unmute yourself. Are you there? Let me do that for you. Let me do that for you.
Got it. Got it.
Ah, there you are.
I got it.
So who are you and what's your take on the topic? Quickly.
Business development for M.M. And my take on the topic is, well, first of all, yes, I won. And secondly, I think artificial intelligence, and I know artificial intelligence is a must in the financial industry. And we are talking to a lot of CFOs, CIOs of financial institutions, and they still look at artificial intelligence as something that they know they will need, but they don't take it right away. So thank you to the Loft to have pushed this through, and please, let's keep the light on artificial intelligence because that's the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much, Mauro. It's been fantastic to have you with us as well. So now we are we transition into the workshop sessions. All you need to do is to assign yourself if you have the latest version of Zoom. Otherwise, the Love team will help you do it. Okay, feel free to self-assign yourself to either workshop 1, workshop 2. And if you don't have the latest version, we'll do it for you. All you need to do is to drop either W1 or W2 in the public chat. It's going to take a couple of minutes until everybody is on board, but I will broadcast whenever we can start. Okay, please go ahead.
Breakout session today. I'm going to share my screen in a second.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Sorry, it's a bit slow here. I'm trying to start the presentation. there we go. Can you all see it, Dimitrios? You can see it, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining. I think you've heard a little bit about M.M, but I do want to spend just a few moments giving you a bit more background on the company, and then we'll spend most of the time of this workshop on how it is an opportunity for using artificial intelligence in investing. So I think we all agree that we live in a world of information overload. It's no different in financial markets. You know, we are overwhelmed with data and reports, and the key really to investing is how to make sense of all that data and stuff that we have at our fingertips and make sense of it. And so M.M was really born out of this recognition that technology can be used to take advantage of the complexity in financial markets. And so the goal for us is to develop understandable artificial intelligence that is used for building investment solutions that suit our clients' requirements and are robust and reliable. And so who are we? As mentioned, we join sophisticated technology with the traditional investment management industry. And so in the sense that how we built our team is also a combination of both, on the one hand, finance veterans, people like Federico Gizzoni, who used to be the former CEO of UniCredit, Marino Valenzise, who is also one of our key shareholders. He used to be CIO at Barings. So really people with a lot of experience in financial background, in the financial market. And we combine that with what we call creative innovators, young talents who come from a scientific background and want to apply that to finance. And so today we are about a bit more than 30 people in the company. About 20 of those are people who come from physics, engineers, data scientists. And so this scientific thinking is really rooted in our culture, and research is at the core of what we do at M.M. And so we want to continuously improve and develop our research, which is why we've created M.M Lab. What is that? So basically, we partner up with, it says on the slide here, 2 universities. It's actually now 3 universities, where we do joint research into market anomalies in the financial markets and their root causes. And so we have an opportunity to work with PhD students and again, data scientists, etc., to assign projects and research what human biases and psychology really underlie market anomalies that we find in financial markets. We work, as I said, with banks, wealth managers, pension plans, family offices, and to date, our clients represent about 600 billion in assets under management. We at M.M, we currently manage, as I said, I think before in the panel discussion, €500 million in dedicated client portfolios, and hopefully that will grow over time. Where have we come from? It's really, the company was started by 2 childhood friends. You've met Tommaso, who in my mind is really the visionary behind the company, and his friend Federico Mazzorin, who's really the geek and the physicist behind the company. And they worked together already while at university. Back in 2013, they started managing their own savings in a strategy based on the artificial intelligence that they had developed. And in 2016, they gained the first client with €1 million. That quickly increased to 20 million in a few months' time. Oops, sorry. And then in 2017, I mentioned that we were awarded by Google for their Entrepreneur Award for startups. That really helped us grow the company. And in 2018, we did a first capital raising, Series A funding of 2 million, which then also coincided with us gaining more clients. At that time, we have roughly 200 million in assets under advisory. And today we are really at the point where we are looking to raise another capital round for further expansion. And we're really looking to grow the company to attract and work with internationally based institutional investors. On a very high level, what do we offer and how do we work with our clients? So coming from 2013, so eight years ago, where we managed, as I said, personal savings using just one strategy, we have really developed further and are now working with our clients in 3 different ways on a very high level. I come to this later in the presentation. Going from left to right, first stage is what we call portfolio diagnostics. And that is really an AA-based approach to review individual investment portfolios and help improve the efficiency. In the middle is what we call asset allocation enhancement. And there we use our artificial intelligence to assess the attractiveness of different asset classes and help clients with their tactical asset allocations. So we give them on a regular basis recommendations to tactically adjust their multi-asset portfolios, for example, or a broad-based investment portfolio to the individual asset classes. And on the right-hand side is what we call portfolio advisory, where we basically manage bespoke client portfolios on the equity and multi-asset side for institutional clients. But now let's look at the more interesting part of the opportunity of AI in investing, and let's step back a little bit and go back in time and see how investing has evolved. So investing, you know, in the 1960s used to be really like this. You had to go out, a lot of people were involved, everyone had to do their own research, information wasn't really available, and there was little computer power involved. Going forward a few decades, 1990s to really very recently, there were more computers involved, but still a lot of people, and it looked like this, you know, everyone sort of in front of their computers, but still big trading rooms going on. And then today, where we are now is really more and more computer power is involved. Still, some humans are involved. But for us, we would argue investing has really become a tech challenge. And so I think we mentioned before, you know, in general, in situations where you have a lot of data available, technology is really an opportunity to help analyze all that data, all that information, and make sense out of it. And, you know, mentioning again the information overload, today there are actually 40 times more bytes of data around than there are stars in the universe. So we are really talking a lot of data. And putting a few more numbers to that feeling, I think Tommaso mentioned earlier that of all the data that we have around today globally, 90% of that was created in the last 2 years. So that's quite staggering. And skipping forward a few years, there are estimates that by 2025, we'll have 175 trillion gigabytes of data, which equals to more than 300 billion years of listening to music. Again, quite staggering. And of course, that is partly fueled by the exponential increase in computer power that has happened. Over the last 20 years, computing power has grown by a multiple of 1,000. And also, of course, the reduction in computing cost has supported that development. Over the last 2 decades, computing cost has almost fallen by 100%. So these sort of dynamics are really driving the increase, the exponential increase of data around. So how can AI help with that? You know, mostly through movies, we all think about robots taking over, and when someone mentions artificial intelligence, but that's not really true. For the application in investing, it's really about using computer power to perform fairly simple and repetitive tasks incredibly fast. And we show here the operation speed of artificial intelligence is 10 trillion operations per second. Now that is very significantly faster than any of us would turn to Google and look up some information. The computer really has the information at their fingertips and can process that incredibly fast. And this is really what underlies the artificial intelligence ability to adapt to new and changing market conditions when it comes to financial markets. And maybe contrary to common belief, AI is already quite advanced and used in many different industries, many day-to-day applications that we often don't even realize is powered by AI. You know, face recognition on your mobile is one of those things. Social media advertising is another, but some probably less commonly known areas in medicine and healthcare, AI is used to is much better, in fact, to diagnose early stage skin cancer. It is used in devices to alert yourself when identifying high risk of stroke. In other industries and navigation, not only us on a day-to-day basis, if we use the GPS in our car to drive around, but also logistics companies analyze road traffic, optimize routes to save time and pollution. In aviation, quite scarily, I think we all know that most of the time the planes really fly by themselves or driven by computers, but the average time that a pilot spends flying the plane is actually just about 7 minutes. And when it comes to the financial services, it's used in certain pockets or areas of financial services. For example, AI makes it possible to detect credit card fraud very early on by analyzing transactions on the credit card. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that we rely on artificial intelligence for its robustness and objectiveness in many aspects of our life, and we can use it for our investments too. And the fact that we have a lot of data makes it almost a perfect application ground for artificial intelligence. And so using AI effectively means applying a structured, scientific approach to investing, which eliminates, as we mentioned before, emotions and human biases. And that really makes it very robust, rational, and reliable. So when we work with or introduce ourselves to institutional investors, we are often likened to traditional quantitative managers, and that is only part of the story. We try to depict that comparison here in a fairly schematic way, but if you represent the financial markets dynamics in a square, then obviously whether you're a fundamental manager or a discretionary manager or a quant manager, you want to capture some of the part of that financial dynamic and profit out of that. And both quantitative managers and AI-driven approaches cover part of the same spectrum. But we also know that financial markets are not static, they change over time. And so the big drawback with traditionally quantitative models were also that they were quite static. And when financial markets changed, they were very slow to adapt. And that is really the leap forward when using artificial intelligence in investing, that these models are really learning as new information comes in and offer adaptability in changing market environments. So on a very high level, let's think a little bit about how artificial intelligence learns to build efficient portfolios. Now, we start with a huge amount of data that we collect, and that is, first of all, cleaned and made consistent, filtering out outliers. Then in the second step, the AI strategy development is basically where we use the computer power to analyze relationships and correlations in the data. And this is what we call learning market dynamics. And then the machine basically uses that learned experience to independently develop a model to exploit market dynamics. And there's a continuous feedback loop in the model, which again is different from traditional quantitative approaches in that any new information is brought into the model as well, and it analyzes that information and learns from new market environments. Now, of course, AI is not the perfect solution to everything. So let's think about what AI can do and what it cannot do. I think I've spent some time about, what it can do is identify anomalies in market dynamics and take advantage of that. It can simulate future scenarios and run different scenarios and adapt to it very quickly. And it can thereby help optimize portfolio positioning. On the other hand, what it cannot learn is predict black swan events, market crises, COVID-19 market crisis, or the 2008 market crisis. That's certainly not something that AI would help you predict. And therefore, it's also not good to necessarily time the market. But what it can do is react to those extraordinary market events very quickly and take advantage of the general inertia that is available in the market. Now, first of all, when we construct portfolios for our clients, what we are trying to achieve is more efficient portfolios. And what we mean by that is we want to have lower volatility in our portfolios, and as such, more consistent outcomes. And this is all relative to broad-based benchmarks like the MSCI World, for example. And then underlying our AI is really two components. On the left-hand side, we show the correlation matrix, where we basically look at all correlations between certain asset classes, all asset classes, but also the underlying individual assets, so individual stocks, individual bonds, etc. We look at correlations over time and how they've changed. And on the other hand, we look at the return distributions. And these are really the two components that feed our artificial intelligence, and that is then used to predict how individual assets will, what sort of return we can expect from them in the next 5 or 6 months, but also how does the correlation potentially change between those individual assets. And that, in a sense, is that the secret sauce, so to speak, to put together portfolios based on what we expect the correlations will be between the individual assets. Now, summarizing a little bit the benefits of AI, just on a high level, I mentioned the leap forward from traditional quantitative approaches. It's the ability to capture new information in the market and adapt to it, react very quickly to it. It's not a static approach where you fix certain parameters, but on the contrary, AI analyzes the market situation and reacts to it. And of course, the elimination of human biases and emotions is a result of the scientific method to making the investment decisions and makes the outcome much more reliable and unbiased. Coming back to, again, the solutions or how we work with our clients, just to go a little bit in more detail. I mentioned portfolio diagnostics, so thinking about the underlying correlations, volatilities of the assets, and that really helps us analyze how a portfolio is managed, what sort of exposures were taken in a portfolio, but also forward-looking, what would happen if certain events took place. Scenario analysis for the portfolio can be done with this tool. Asset allocation enhancement, I think I explained in sufficient detail probably, that we help and try to give advice to our clients how to tactically adjust their asset allocation in their portfolios. And again, the portfolio advisory is managing individual equity and multi-asset portfolios for our clients. Now, how do we work? How do we approach our cooperation with our clients? And I'd say that all our solutions are customized. So our clients can work with us and tell us what they want to achieve from their investment portfolios, be it on a risk basis, on a return objective, but also incorporating, of course, all their investment guidelines and constraints. And so thinking about a straightforward equity portfolio, that may be very simple and straightforward. You have certain guidelines, you have an investment universe. But if you're doing an asset allocation analysis or recommendation, then it becomes a bit more complex. And so we start really from, in step one, defining the strategy. What is the investment objective of the client? What is the risk profile they are happy to live with? And that is translated into defined parameters between us and the client. Then in the second step, we look at the investment universe. Again, if it's an equity portfolio, that's fairly straightforward. A global portfolio would be probably MSCI World or Country World. But if you're talking about an asset allocation solution, then you have to think about what sort of ETFs are you allowed to invest in, what sort of maybe mutual funds you want to use in to get exposure and to tactically allocate between those underlying funds. And then in the third step, the parameters get defined. So these parameters are turned into customized constraints, which are fed into the model and are in accordance with the client's investment strategy. And then in the final stage is the training process of the AI, which is, again, based on the individual client's objectives and guidelines. And that takes about 1 or 2 weeks for the model to really learn and use the data and build the model. And then we typically work with our clients on an advisory basis, meaning that we share a target portfolio, and the allocation is done by the ultimate client. Here are our use cases. So these are the live strategies that we currently run. So these would be portfolio advisory. We run, let me get this out of the way, a multi-asset portfolio that has an almost 3-year track record. Our European portfolio is the one with the longest track record, going back to the summer of 2017. And we also run a global equity portfolio taking into account ESG constraints that has a little more than 2 years track record. All of those portfolios I'd highlight at the bottom, some of the key characteristics. Not only have we fulfilled what we are set out to achieve on the return basis, but also look at the volatility. In all those cases, the volatility of our portfolios is significantly lower than that of the benchmark. And again, that goes back to our goal to create efficient portfolios that have reliable and consistent outcomes for our clients. And with that, I'd pause here and see if I can answer any questions.
I encourage you to ask your questions, pose your questions to Yvonne, right? Yvonne, by the way, I have one question myself, right? Do you consider the goals of the clients, what they need to achieve? And do you consider the risk profile on that? And one more, I'd like to come back to 2 questions together is, you use active strategies or passive?
Yes, so it's all active strategies. We are trying to, as I said, create portfolios that are more efficient, meaning better diversified portfolios that hopefully give a better return that you gain from a broad-based benchmark. The client objectives are taken into account, of course, because all our portfolios are customized, so they reflect the risk and return objectives that the clients want to achieve. And then ultimately also the investment guidelines and constraints are, of course, also taken into consideration and input into our model so that they are adhered to on a day-to-day basis in managing the portfolio.
Excellent. So I noticed that there is one question from Michael. Michael, you want to jump in, please, and loudly pose your question?
Yeah, sure. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for this meeting. It was a wonderful experience. So my question mainly is focusing on, from an internal audit perspective, regarding the value, the cost value assessment that of the use of AI technologies and machine learning. So yeah, my question is essentially if there is any cost value assessment that is done in a period, in a year, for example, that can show the benefits, the actual benefits of using the AI.
Yes, it's a very good question. So obviously, you know, we try to achieve the investment objective of the institutional investor that we work with. And typically that is to either a benchmark relative objective, meaning outperforming a broad-based benchmark, or it could be, you know, creating value added by tactically adjusting an asset allocation. So there you see the value, you should be able to see the value of the AI-based investment strategies quite directly when you check whether we have achieved those investment objectives for the client. On the cost side, we work similar to other asset managers in that we charge our clients for managing the portfolios, and that is usually you know, a few tenths of basis points that comes out of the performance. And so you would immediately see, you know, after cost, how much added value we have been able to generate for our clients.
There are two more questions. I don't know if we have time. Yvonne need to take it. It's from Ryan and Jack. I missed them. So I don't know if one more we can take.
Sure.
Who of you two wants to jump in and loudly say the question? Ryan, you want to jump in? Jacques, maybe? Okay, so
well, I actually was interested in knowing what were the reasons behind M.M's good performance. If they were about drawdowns, were efficiency, mitigation, about risk management. How you stand on that? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So by designing, so looking at, let's go back to the portfolio performance here for our three strategies. So by designing portfolios, more efficient portfolios, and reducing volatility in the portfolio relative to the broad-based equity markets, for example, the result of that is that in drawdown, so in market crisis, and you can see that quite nicely here in the middle picture. Let's look at the European equity chart there, the performance. There was, of course, we had this big drawdown in early 2020 as a result of the COVID crisis, where markets collapsed. And while our performance also went down, you see that the green line actually stopped going down much at a higher level than the benchmark. And that is something we would expect, that we protect capital in downtrending markets and sharp downturns. I think then the other part is then on the upside, right? When markets recover, and often they recover quite significantly, and in a short, like a snap back after such a big drawdown. You see that there quite nicely. Typically, our portfolios, and saying that, you know, why we stopped the capital loss at the drawdown was really that the AI adapted very quickly to the change in market and repositioned the portfolio. And then we were able to, even in the upturning markets, also gain relative performance and perform very well relative to the broader market. So it's a combination of both, you know, protecting capital when markets go down, but also on a more consistent level in normal markets, you know, always a little bit better performance that then ultimately over long periods of time makes up for a nice outperformance.
I think it's time to wrap up, right? I don't know, we need to give it to Anthony because, yeah, the time has already passed.
Yep. Well, from my side, thank you very much for listening in. I wish you all a happy Easter, and I hope this presentation and also the panel discussion was of interest to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you.
on the case I've built based on my investment hypothesis to maximize the symmetry at the decision point. That's true no matter which asset class I'm in, investment strategy, no matter if it's fully discretionarily run or automated through algorithmic support, or no matter if I'm running a 5 million portfolio, 5 billion or 500 billion portfolio, right? That's our task at the decision point. Thing is, and this refers to what we've discussed before on the panel, how to take most evidence-based investment decisions, meaning how do I assess the market complexity the best I can at the decision point? Well, if you follow the logic of Knight, but also Gigerenzer and Mousavi, so Shabnam, they published extensively on that, is a distinction between different risk types and uncertainty. And depending on what I'm exposed to at the decision point, different assessment techniques are to be preferred. So the whole domain of augmented intelligence, where, for instance, advanced statistical methodologies can make a difference, is somewhere there at the dark gray end of risk assessment. Because there I have sufficient data in quantity and quality that allow me as decision maker to feed the machine. The machine, if not fed with the right quantity and quality of data, is nothing else than garbage in, garbage out. So yes, AI and the different parts of AI can contribute to me having the best possible assessment of that asymmetry in a certain part of market complexity, namely here when we have unknown knowns. When it comes to uncertainty, then we switch from an optimizing behavior to a satisfying behavior. And this is what Professor Mousavi referred to as using heuristics that are good enough. And this is still almost solely the domain of human intelligence, where artificial intelligence can contribute to some extent, but not as much as here. Does a market phenomenon present itself, whether if it's somewhere here, here, or there? No, this is to be assessed by the final decision maker. The thing is, when you look at risk management and portfolio management systems out there, then they are good in managing standardized risks. Was the transaction meeting best execution requirements, for instance? That's fine, that's important, that's good, that makes markets more efficient. But it doesn't make me more competitive because you also have to comply to the same rules. So standardizable market phenomena through regulation, through business best practices are easy to manage through the technology out there, but don't give me the comparative advantage in my innovative specialization, so I'm better than you. Which means I somehow need to have a better understanding towards the left end of market complexity. And there the machine plays a role, but not necessarily a dominant role. Why? Because what we have seen over the last 3 generations of optimization techniques in portfolio management is that the moment we switch from assuming us being a homo economicus, so fully rational, to us being bounded in our rationality, the behavioral side in decision-making becomes one of the 2 prime factors. Like mentioned before, it's about skill management and then converting that into decision management, or using an analogy. Let's say we are Usain Bolt, the superstar sprinter. This gentleman deliberately practiced for more than 20 years to be ready. That's a skill management part. And then if he tumbles out of the starting block, he still doesn't win. So then he needs to convert that skill set, the best of his abilities, into delivering, taking the most evidence-based decision to make it first to the finish line. And that's exactly it that needs to be done in investment management as well. The mandate I mentioned before, this not only comes from PRI and then trickles down, but it also has arrived at the gold standard setting bodies like the CFA Institute, with which we closely work, where they understood that it's no longer enough to make the levels 1 to 3 difficult, to be well educated, so well skilled once I'm a charter holder. But the post-charter education is as important to manage the skill side, whatever the skills are. Technical skills, from programming to fundamental analysis, whatever, but also non-technical skills. And only then they prepare me to take the most evidence-based assessment of the asymmetry at the decision point. So somehow we need to bring together in an investment committee the integration of those 4 into our decision support system, where the investment committee is a part of. And decision support system is well researched. We at the decision point are influenced by who we are and how we are, so ourselves, then how we embed it in the team. And this summarizes the behavioral side of how I'm influenced at the decision point. And then I'm also influenced by the tools I'm having available, so the data, the computer system, the assessment methodologies. Their AI is part of this box, the toolbox, and how that is embedded in the process, the investment process itself, so the choice architectural side. And that's a solution. I need to optimize the quality routines on all 4 dimensions to make most evidence-based investment decisions. So AI is embedded in those techniques here. Summarizing it, that you better work on your skill management and decision management to maximize your understanding of this asymmetry at decision point. Any questions so far? Any remarks? Does that sound plausible?
All good, Markus.
Because what you try to achieve with your investment decision support system is keeping the individual decision maker or the team, an investment committee, in the optimal performance zone, cognitively speaking. We know the effects individually or as a team when one gets cognitively over-aroused. Then we become pro-cyclical, and with pro-cyclicality comes the behavior gap penalty, so underperformance over market performance. That is well researched. So that's why I mentioned before, the bottleneck is not necessarily the data or how the data is processed, but how it's being presented to the decision maker or makers so that they don't get overwhelmed, but can stay focused on assessing this asymmetry at decision point between risk and reward. And if I stay focused individually as a team, I can steepen my learning curve to better understand market complexity towards the left end. And this is how I maintain my comparative advantage. And here comes the tricky part. In order to maximize the quality routines on all 4 dimensions, individual, team, the processes, and the toolbox, the most optimal intervention point is not the technology, is not the team, is not the process itself, it's the individual. I can put a Ferrari next to you and say, drive fast. If you don't know how to drive a Ferrari, you will not make it out of the starting block. This is the bottleneck. And this is also the promising upside. That's why I said, if you want to benefit from AI, improve your HI. And this context now meets the investment committee. When we onboard an investment committee, what we see as standard setting also meets the what literature has gained as an insight, namely that investment committees tend to be about maximizing my own career perspective and not necessarily understanding market complexity better together. So Senior trumps junior, man trumps woman, extrovert trumps introvert. As a result, you have defensive decision-making as a default setting. As a result, you have rationalizing decisions, right? Because the CIO spoke first in investment committee. Even if I was of different opinion and have good reason to oppose, I don't want to risk my career perspectives. I'd rather get in line. And for obvious reasons, that's a problem for the one decision you need to take now, but also for the patterns or for the many decisions you then call track record. And that's why when you approach an investment committee and say, okay, you need to step up to better quality decisions, the first response is no time, no budget, and we know what we're doing anyway. And the funny thing is, as long as the tide is rising for all, the performance over the last 10 years doesn't look that bad. If you made a percentage more or less than the peer, you don't lose your job over that, right? But we are market professionals, meaning what is expected from us, and that is very much in line with the mandate we got from the society, is that we maximize our skill contribution to investment decisions and not our luck contribution. You might remember, I was part of that industry before in the 2000s. Long-term equity managers in the 2000s just ran market beta in a leveraged way and cashed in performance fees. That was a skill. That was just, a shortcut. For that, it wasn't worth paying the 220 or the 330. So what I want to see as investor when approaching an investment professional is that this person, that this team, that this investment committee maximizes skill contribution and minimizes luck contribution. That's why this initial response is not good enough. When it comes to documenting the decision quality of investment committees, those are the managerial problems we see. When it's documented, like recording it, transcribing it, then to have something for the compliance officer, to the risk manager, to the regulator. So you document to stay compliant. What you're taking away from it is to learn from your own successes and mistakes. Investment decision-making is well documented for the compliance officer at the decision point, but not from where I start my build-up of my investment hypothesis, which I then validate or falsify. That's why what we see is a phenomenon intact in our industry is what's called harking, hypothesizing after the fact. I can rewrite my reason of why I've actually bought the stock. Because 3 weeks later, I might not be able to remember of why I actually bought the stock, or I'm incentivized not to actually remember well because the trade went belly up. So I'd rather rewrite the past of why I've entered a position to make myself not look that bad. But in order for me to keep my learning curve steep, I need to remember. I need to know why I've taken decisions at one point to improve myself from there. So this is no longer just a game where we say, okay, we make more money out of money. No, with this mandate we better deliver on playing a vital role in capital redeployment towards SDGs, which means we need to have an understanding of which impact we try to achieve, how do we achieve it, and then measure whether we've achieved it. So there's a causal sequence of events. Therefore, I need to have a good understanding of why I do things, starting with properly postulating my investment hypothesis as an individual market participant, but also as an investment committee. Why is that important? Well, because the market doesn't wait for us. If I don't do it, it's more likely to fall behind the curve. With the market itself being an adaptive system, that's why we have this half-life, right? Because This reflection loop between practitioners and academics produces new insights constantly. So there's a chance to be comparatively better than others by stepping up. I show you a survey we ran together with OMFIF. You might know this think tank based in London, on large institutional investors, including national development banks, but also central banks, on how investment companies are structured. And if you think about adaptive behavior, so stepping up, that's not represented in those investment companies of the very deep pockets that are out there. Funny, no matter how large those pockets are, so as the assets under management, we talk about investment companies sizing between 15 and 20 people. And those people rather have a high turnover, right? So most of them get replaced between 0 and 4 years, which does something to the team constellation itself. If the focus would be on maximizing the cognitive diversity of the team members, a turnover might actually be positive. But the way it's being managed is that the replacement of one team member was, in national development banks, for instance, a political reason, or a reason that there was sympathy for another person, but not because of how can we together understand capital markets better to consequently position our portfolio. Is cognitive diversity measured and acted upon in those investment companies? The answer is no. Now, I'm speeding up a bit. We have a good understanding of what the machine can contribute and what should stay in the hands of an investment company, of the human decision maker. And the decision support system I introduced before can be assisted with intelligence on different levels. You know, can we fully delegate it to the machine yet? No, not yet. Are professional investors using different forms of intelligence, especially augmented? Yes, you see some examples there from the big players. And when delegating it to something that can be well defined and then fed with data in good quantity and quality, you see that the human shouldn't even touch it anymore. All good. So what can be delegated to the machine should be delegated to the machine. You just have to know what can be delegated to the machine. The limitations come from what I've shown you before with the different risk and uncertainty types. The advanced statistical methodologies still understand capital markets not to be path dependent, but independent, as if I could find a good proxy through correlation-based analysis. Now, question, how does life work? In a path dependent or independent way? Do I cut my finger and then I start bleeding, or the other way around? It's obvious when we go beyond finance, but as capital markets are a subset of our society, capital markets are also happening path dependently. Therefore, a correlation-based understanding of capital markets phenomena is only the second best over a causality-based assessment. And this is the very fundamental constraint of artificial intelligence. We talked about skill maximization and luck minimization. Now, summarizing and concluding with investment company design principles, what you try to do is what can be delegated to the machine should be, and then when it comes back, it should be as easy to comprehend as possible, meaning gamify, visualize, break it down in small parts so the investment company doesn't get overwhelmed by it. And what you can do on the human intelligence side of how to structure, how you design an investment company is increase the throughput of the people in the investment company. So make them more resilient to new information. How can you do that? Well, working on both sides, the behavioral side and the choice architectural side, like starting with how diverse the team is. And when it comes to good investment decisions, it's not necessarily gender diversity that matters most, that matters a lot for societal reasons, but what matters most is cognitive diversity. And then make them work together, incentivize them so they can provide critical appraisals. If you can show me the best possible sequence of evidence for buying this and selling that, and I do the very same, and that can be, as part of producing the evidence, AI backed, we have a completely different conversation. Yeah, we could talk more. I guess the slide deck is shared with you anyway. If you have questions on the details there, please approach me. No? Point is, you want to increase the throughput on the choice architectural side and the behavioral side. I'm jumping to the end because our time is up. As a few takeaways. So as simple rules, what I invite you to take away from this workshop is focus on maximizing the cognitive diversity for reasons explained. Then incentives eat ethics for breakfast. Therefore, incentivize the team that it focuses on producing most evidence-based investment decisions, including what can be provided by artificial intelligence when it comes to those risk types where it can add value. And then make those insights easy to comprehend by the team. And it's not human intelligence or artificial intelligence, right? It's about how to create a feedback loop between those two. It's what Shabnam has referred to. And then it's about repeating it, establishing those quality routines with an emphasis on routines for a reason I want to show you. If you are, if you're deliberately practicing, now our industry is full of passive forms of learning. You get the continuous education credits if you read an article or listen to me right now, which I appreciate. Thanks for listening. But are you changing your life because what I told you? No, right? So if you don't convert that impulse into deliberate practice, it will fade. It will fade fast. So point is, if you establish new quality routines in your investment committee, make it repeating those routines.
Thank you, Markus. Thank you so much. I'm Alex from the Loft. I'm jumping in because we don't have much time left. So maybe we can also open the floor to questions. We already have Gary Nere with us. Mentioned something. Gary, if you can unmute yourself and please share what you have to say. Thank you.
No, thank you, Alex. Wasn't meant, it was just to share on the chat because I saw Christian was also sharing a point of view with regards to the trading of with AI, making them more autonomous, or at least those nano trading that is going behind. And as such, the models and the bias, because behavioral finance is about going against the biases, of course, that one can have. And I believe that AI will be as good as the model that is behind, because the person who built the model may also have certain biases. So it might create a loop that will not give the right prediction, so to say, for your investment decision. Thank you.
And that's also what's evident in the literature, right? If I'm not careful, that I see my own biases reflected in the code. Now, the interesting thing is, as markets are adaptive, those patterns I want to exploit through my investment strategy change over time. Now, as long as the patterns are rather stable and measurable through good quantity and quality of data, I can delegate the exploitation to the machine. All good. Yeah. I just need to find a way of how to observe whether those patterns change over time. And this is what the academia tries to figure out right now, right? What about regime changes? What about having data in a structured and unstructured way? Because the switch from risk to uncertainty is not like a clean cut. Yeah? It's transitional. So at one point, I have a mix of cues I can rather read well and cues that are blurry. Yeah? So what do I do with that? To what extent does it make sense to have my algorithm still reading and interpreting the data, and where I need to step in to then take it from there?
Christian, you want to add something?
Hello, everyone. I would just add the point to my question with the high frequency trading. I can imagine that the temptation will be to allow AI systems to go into higher frequency trading stuff, and I see an exponentially growing risk in that case. I am old enough to remember that we have seen major crashes because of automated systems. So thank you.
I'm a quant by education practitioner. I developed the long-term equity strategy for a hedge fund in the 2000s. I think what we need to understand is that whether we are playing a winner's game or a loser's game. The vast majority of market participants play a loser's game, where it's about minimizing mistakes. And only a handful of market participants can play a winner's game, where I have a robust enough niche where the pattern can be held static, so I can have an optimizing behavior. And high frequency trading was like that for a certain period of time. Think of the time advantage some data vendors allowed high frequency traders to exploit, but that's like insider trading. It was somewhere in the gray zone, right? So I have an advantage which I can secure and exploit that through optimizing behavior. Now, those times are over. Data vendors stopped that for various reasons. And you see that high frequency trading actually dropped as percentage of overall trades in the market. So those heydays might be over, but yes, it is tempting to